Hello and welcome. I'm Kriti Mehta and you're watching World Report on NewsX World. Let's take a look at the top headlines this hour. Netanyahu submits request for pardon during his ongoing corruption trial. Netanyahu has been at war against the country's legal system over the charges, said the request would help unify the country at a time of momentous changes in the region. Opposition says Israel's Netanyahu should plead guilty and retire if he wants presidential pardon. Opposition leaders call on Herzog to reject PM's pardon request, say it harms rule of law, but coalition members praise Netanyahu's decision to request pardon in corruption trial. Russia says Ukrainian drone attacks killed 2 civilians, left 1 injured in Russia's Belgorod region. The strike also damaged a private house, a household facility and a car. Ukraine regional authorities claim Russian attacks across Ukraine killed at least 5 civilians and injured at least 38 over the past day. In Kyiv Oblast, an overnight drone killed 1 person and injured 19 others in Vyshhorod, a town 15 kilometers north of Kyiv. Belarus Defense Ministry says it is ready to build dialogue with NATO to ensure security, adds there are many issues between Belarus and the West, including NATO members. Hong Kong high-rise fire death toll rises to 146 as thousands pay respects. There are still 150 people missing and the blaze has left 79 injured. Floods and landslides from cyclonic rains have killed more than 442 people in Sumatra. Around 80,000 have been evacuated, more than 279 remain missing and hundreds are stranded across 3 provinces amid ongoing severe weather. Refuting rumors about Imran Khan's death, a senator from his party confirmed he is alive and currently lodged in Adiala jail. Khan is being kept in isolation as authorities exert pressure on him to leave the country. And moving on to the top focus story on World Report now, Israel's opposition leader Yair Lapid has called on President Isaac Herzog not to pardon Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu unless he admits to guilt, expresses remorse and retires from politics, as it would harm the rule of law and allow the premier to evade responsibility for his alleged actions. Lapid's statement came shortly after Netanyahu asked the country's president for a pardon in his years-long corruption trial, arguing that criminal proceedings were hindering his ability to govern and a pardon would be good for Israel. Let's listen in to what the Israeli opposition leader had to say.
לנשיא הרצוג, אתה לא יכול לתת לו חנינה בלי הודעה באשמה, הבעת חרטה ופרישה מיידית.
Senior members of ruling coalition praised Netanyahu's decision to seek a formal pardon, and Defense Minister Israel Katz has called on President Isaac Herzog to accede to Netanyahu's request for a pardon, arguing that such a move would bring an end to the severe division that splits the nation. Meanwhile, President Herzog's office announced earlier that the request had been received, releasing the letter from the lawyers and adding that the request would be processed according to standard practice. Keith Walls, who is the former British minister, now joins us live from London. Thank you, Mr. Walls, for joining us once again on NewsX World. How are you viewing the sudden change in stance that Netanyahu is making in his corruption trial? Is it keeping the next year elections in mind?
Good afternoon, Kriti from London. The fact is, this is an extraordinary request from a sitting Prime Minister to a President, asking for there to be a pardon, because these particular proceedings have been going on for years and years. So it's difficult to know why now. Why is it being requested now? What President Herzog has to do is consider this very carefully. And it is right to say that if Israel is a country that believes in the rule of law, and it's a democracy, you have to allow the judicial process to be separate from government. Otherwise, there's no point in having an independent judiciary. So these are very serious and difficult issues for him to try and resolve. The complication, of course, is that Prime Minister Netanyahu has not been convicted of anything. These are ongoing proceedings. There is no conviction. So what are you pardoned for? I can quite understand in America what happens is that you are convicted and then the president pardons you. So it's on the record.
Right.
But now he's actually not been convicted. He's an innocent man. Despite the fact that you've got all these proceedings going on, he's not been convicted of anything.
Right.
These are allegations, these are proceedings, these are investigations, but he's not been convicted. So what do you pardon? It's far better to write, I think, to the prosecution service and ask them to stop the proceedings until he ceases to be prime minister. For example, this is what happens in America. You can't do anything to deal with the American system until after it's over. In America, you write to the Attorney General and say to the American Attorney General, can you stop the proceedings because you're doing the prosecution? So this is extraordinary, bringing politics in this way into the judicial system. Does it mean every single person convicted or going through the process of every single crime can use this same defense? I can quite understand why the Prime Minister is doing this. He must be very busy in preparing his defense. But at the end of the day, you need to understand there is a far better value, and that is the rule of law. And that is presumably what President Herzog will consider.
Would you accede that this request for pardon is also an admission of guilt?
No, I wouldn't. I think that you can't possibly, if you accept that the principle of no one is found guilty until they've gone through due process, merely asking for it is not an admission of guilt, in my view. It is something for the courts to decide on. I mean, at the end of the day, of course, Donald Trump is the most powerful man in the world, can always pardon Netanyahu, even though he has no power to do so, because he's already, in a sense, pardoned him. He's received him in the White House. He knows that he's subject to an ICJ arrest warrant, but he has completely ignored that. So from that point of view, anyone can pardon him. But what really matters is whether the president of Israel is able to do so. And frankly, until this had happened, I didn't even know the president of Israel had the capacity to do this and pardon someone either in the middle of a trial or after conviction. In the UK, there is such a thing as a royal pardon, but this is usually for people who have been convicted of an offence years and years ago, and they are basically dead. And you go back and you say, let's posthumously pardon them. But I've not known of any case in terms of the British rule of law where this could happen. Very extraordinary.
What's a sense of what the president is going to do? There's also requests gone to him from Trump himself to pardon Netanyahu. What do you foresee?
Well, I don't think, look, in my heart, I don't think that Netanyahu would have written to the president unless he would know the outcome. There's the first rule of politics, and maybe in journalism as well, Pretty. I don't know whether you all are trained to do this in journalism. Don't ask a question unless you know what the answer is going to be. And therefore, from that point of view, he might already know what the answer is going to be. The fact that Donald Trump has asked for something does not mean the president of Israel should do anything, because, of course, he's above party politics. Why doesn't Netanyahu pardon himself? That's probably the best way to deal with it, because I don't know the system in Israel. I assume he appoints the Attorney General. I assume they have an independent prosecution system, and I assume that he appoints the person who does the prosecuting. So he can pardon himself. That would be much better for him than getting the president, who is above all party politics, to be involved in this matter. I think on either side, people are going to be pretty angry. But I think everyone who sits in the Knesset, who believes in the rule of law, should allow the due process to continue. Pardons should come at the end of the trial, not before the trial starts.
All right. Thanks, Mr. Vaz, for joining us and also for that lesson in journalism. And with that, we shift our focus now to news from Ukraine. Now, the Ukrainian military has launched drone strikes on 2 districts in Russia's Belgorod region. 2 civilians have been reportedly killed, leaving 1 injured. Authorities have confirmed that a drone hit a car in Beryozovka of the Belgorod region, leading to 2 fatalities. Moreover, another drone exploded in Moskiono, where it wounded a man who was then moved to a local hospital in serious condition. The attack also damaged a private house, a household structure, and a vehicle. Officials now continue to assess the extent of the damage as security measures remain in place across the region. Meanwhile, in a separate development, the Russian Defense Ministry has reported heavy losses for Ukrainian forces in the Minsk area of eastern Ukraine. The ministry has said that over 260 Ukrainian troops were eliminated yesterday. As of now, Russian units are advancing in the eastern part of Minsk and the Donetsk district, while also clearing Rovnoy of remaining forces. And Martin Saez, who's an international affairs expert, joins us live from Ecuador. Well, thank you, Martin, for joining us here at NewsX World. Now, I would start by asking you, how do you see these shellings that are continuing despite that the peace plan that's being drafted by Trump is in the working?
I think the best for Ukraine right now would be to settle down and to accept the deal, because right now we're seeing a lot of falls in Ukrainian territory, and we're seeing that the Russians are getting strengthened. And I think right now the issue here is that Zelensky does not want to give up on his political career, and also he thinks that this deal is not in favor of Ukrainian interests. But to be honest, like, the reality is that if Ukraine does not accept the deal, it will end up very bad. Like, the Russians will start invading more territory and claiming more territory that does not belong to them. So I think it's critical to settle in a deal.
All right, and do you expect for Russia to be agreeing to the peace plan?
Well, Putin just said that he's willing to accept it. Like, he had like the meeting with Trump and they already talked about its different issues and each one's interests. So right now, I think Russia is ready to accept the deal. Right now, the question is whether Ukraine is going to accept it or not.
But Zelensky has pitched that he's favorable to the revised peace plan, and there are also going to be talks now that will be held even before Witkoff reaches Moscow.
Yeah, hopefully Trump will get these 2 leaders together and they will settle each party's interest, whether it is territorial, geopolitical. And I think right now Russia is more focused on conserving the territories that were taken before, like Crimea and the Donetsk region. And right now I think Ukraine's interest is not to give up on more land and to give up on natural resources. Like, the Americans were asking for a lot of natural resources in order to support the Ukrainian war, which is detrimental for Ukraine.
All right. What, in your opinion, are also some of the sticking points in this 28-piece plan, and if there are any sides that are going to be conceding?
So right now the question is, what specific region will be held by Russia and Ukraine? Ukraine is willing to accept the old territories, to give up on the old territories, but right now The territories that were conquered by Russia in the last war are undisputed, and Ukraine is really not wanting and not willing to give up on that.
All right, do stay on with us, Martin. Thank you for sharing your opinion on that. But we have some news now from Belarus. Viewers, Belarus says it's ready to engage with NATO countries to strengthen security across Eastern Europe. Belarusian defense official Valery Revenko stated that 10 NATO member states are currently accredited in Belarus, and the country is open to explaining its positions while also hearing the views of Western partners. He emphasized that Minsk aims to build dialogue, reduce tension, and work toward consensus on regional stability. Revenko also highlighted ongoing disagreements with the West, saying Western nations tried to pressure Belarus, isolate it, and impose economic and political costs. He made it clear that Belarus rejects those attempts and continues to follow its own policies focused on good neighborliness and regional security. Despite the strained ties, Revenko said that Belarus still maintains communication channels with the European Union and NATO members. He stressed that Minsk remains committed to stability in Eastern Europe and open to dialogue where mutual understanding is possible. I want to bring back Martin into the discussion here. Martin, do you think that this is possible for Belarus to join NATO at all, given the time and again, he's taken a stance that's against the European Union's, with the latest being his assertion that he will continue to import oil and gas from Russia, given the cheap rates that it gets it from.
First of all, we need to remember that Belarus has been a long-standing ally from Russia. From the beginning of the fall of the beginning of the Russian Federation, and Belarus has been very aligned with Russian interests ideologically and economically. Right now that Belarus is watching that the new situation worldwide, the new economy, that Russia has been affected by these sanctions by the European Union, Belarus is starting to wake up to the new situation that they're going to lose a lot if they don't align with European interests too. They're like in the middle of two different worlds. So in one side, Belarus is trying to keep their relationship with Russia, which has been long-standing good. But at the same time, they want to be part of the European Union because they know the high cost of being basically an economical and political enemy of the European Union. So they would like to be part of NATO in order to have taking for granted their economical and stability and their geopolitical stability. So right now, I think Belarus is playing a game of trying to be a good neighbor in the two sides.
All right. Do you think, in fact, why do you think it is that Minsk is largely now being subjugated by Russia?
So basically, because of the actual situation, I mean, starting by the war, starting by changes in the geopolitical spectrum, Donald Trump is starting its worldwide economical war, and they are watching that Russia is losing a lot. So basically, this strategy of Belarus is more economical than ideological. They can be ideologically aligned with Russia, but they're seeing that a new ally that is the West can be very beneficial for their interest.
All right. Well, for now, thanks, Martin, for joining us here at Newsx World. And with that, we shift our focus. Now, in Kyiv, Okansa and Markarova, former ambassador to the United States, has been appointed as President Zelensky's new advisor on Ukraine's reconstruction and investment. According to President Zelensky, Markarova will help strengthen Ukraine's financial stability, improve its business climate, attract investment, and plan for long-term recovery in collaboration with strategic partners. Zelensky also emphasized that Markarova's expertise will support Ukraine's rebuilding efforts as the country continues to defend itself and plan for future economic growth. Now, he's also emphasized, in fact, that Markarova's expertise will help rebuild the country that's being devastated from 4 years of war, and former ambassador to the US has been appointed now as Zelensky's new advisor. And now moving on, viewers, floodwaters continued to rise in Sri Lanka's capital Colombo, prompting authorities to evacuate thousands of residents from low-lying areas. The authorities have said that at least 153 people on the island nation have been killed by Cyclone Ditwa, with 191 others missing and more than 500,000 affected nationwide. Government officials have urged residents to heed warnings and evacuation orders. Visuals from the city's flooded streets showed army vehicles navigating submerged roads, rescuers using boats, and residents wading through waterlogged roads. More than 78,000 people have been moved to nearly 800 relief centers, mostly set up in schools. That's all that we have time for. Keep watching NewsX World for more international news updates from across the world.
What